Welcome to SEL in EDU.
where we discuss all things social and emotional in education.
I'm Krista.
And I'm Craig, and we are your hosts on this journey.
Welcome, SEL in EDU family, to our next episode. Our dearest friend Craig is still out and about in schools, and we are happy to welcome Tammy Muziowski-Borneman, way over from Hawaii, although it's not 6 a.m. anymore. Tammy, how are you doing a couple hours later?
Yeah, so our first recording today was really early. But yeah, now I'm into my day and it's feeling good. It's sunny, the birds are still chirping, got my workout in, and yeah, I'm just enjoying doing the recordings with you. How are you today?
I am good. And I'm laughing because when we first got on, I'm like, oh, how was your nap? And you're like, I didn't nap. And I
You're
forgot
the napper. I'm not the napper.
Yeah. Between us, when we're both feeling tired, you go work out and I crawl into bed. And then we both come back refreshed and ready to work. I'm like, oh yeah, you got all the things done already. And it's not even lunchtime there for you.
Yes.
I aspire to be like you at some point in my life. Well, I am excited to have a very special guest and dear friend on. Normally, we eat lunches at Red Robin once a month and catch up on all the things, but now we were able to get him on record talking about all of his brilliance. So I'm excited to introduce Dr. Randy Ziegenfuss. Randy is a professor of practice in an EDD program at a local university near me called Moravian, and he is on a mission to shake up K-12 education, steering it towards a friendlier, human-centered approach that keeps pace with our tech-filled world. I can't imagine anything better and more aligned to SEL than this. He is innately curious and wonders, what if we start by transforming our mindsets and getting inspired by the challenges blocking our path? Randy has worn many hats as a public school superintendent, tech director, music teacher, choir and musical director, and a higher ed administrator. Each role has added a splash of color to his vision of education and leadership. And now, as a professor of practice in the EDD program and the program director at Moravian University, he is still learning and hoping to inspire the next wave of educators. Hi, Randy. Welcome to SEL in EDU.
Hello, ladies. Good to be here.
What is on your heart today? How are you coming into the conversation?
Well, I heard you mention the word nap.
Mm-hmm.
And I love naps. That's one of the ways that I sort of rejuvenate myself before I'm doing something like a podcast. So I have had my nap today, and it's been a great day. I was actually in the office and had a couple of really good conversations that are moving things forward. You love those conversations when you like sit down with people and you just kind of get in that vibe and the momentum builds. And then you get to the end of that conversation, you're like, that was awesome. Take a couple notes. Let's move on to the next thing. So you do that as an introvert, somebody who is actually quite introverted. You do that a couple times and you get a little tired. You got to sort of like recharge, regain your energy. So I like to do that with a nap.
Can I say, so there's 3 introverts on this podcast right now. And it's funny how, you find these connections with, you're like people, the introverts. And the deep conversations, though, they are really tiring. Like I will find that after a good Zoom session or a good coaching session or something, I'm like, okay, I need to just sit back and like sit in my thoughts for a little bit. And I do have an extroverted side, like I used to be very on at conferences and just like do all the stuff for like all the hours. But then the last, since we've been back from COVID, I'm like, ooh, I'm happy to go back at 8:00 to sit in my room and sit with my thoughts and just recharge. So I just found it kind of funny that we all identify as introverted and we're happy to talk, broadcast our ideas for lots of people to listen to. But, we're not on video either. So that kind of takes some of the pressure off.
That does. So, people can't see the crazy faces that Randy's making at me right now.
Right.
Oh my gosh. So Tammy, one thing that you mentioned that reminded me. So one thing that as an introvert, I find myself, I wake up in the morning and I've got like all somehow through my dreams or whatever, like all these things are going through my head. It's the moment I wake up. So
Mhm.
one thing I do is I come downstairs and I have my note-taking app and I
Mm.
just sort of dump all that stuff out. And that actually helps me sort of navigate the day. I'm also one of those people that kind of plans it out the night before. Like I'll boom, 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 all the appointments or all the tasks, things that I want to do, prioritize things. But I think that's one of the ways that I kind of keep myself grounded and a little bit in
Yeah.
check and like making sure I'm not overbooking myself and getting too emotionally exhausted, but really kind of being scripted about the day. But I also find for me, a habit is just to like dump all that stuff out of my brain in the morning.
I like that idea because I too wake up with all of the things in my head that I know are in my calendar, but I do like your idea of writing them down as a way to just get it out anyway. Um, I'm one of those people who, I go against the grain sometimes, and I know you're not really supposed to, I'm air quoting, like look at your phone in the morning, but that's the way that I ground my day. I look at my calendar and then I do a quick sweep through my emails because then if I don't do that right away, then I'm just thinking about who's emailed. Like, I need to go check that? So I just check it, do a quick look. And if there's nothing important there, then I feel better. And if there's somebody that I need to respond to, then I'm aware of it. So just kind of like a different way to start my day. I know screen time isn't the greatest, but it helps me just feel more grounded about the day.
So here's a curiosity I have. I find myself oftentimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'll like have this idea or this solution to something that I've been thinking about. And I have to force myself to like, well, what I'll do is I'll pick up my phone and I'll text message myself the
Mm-hmm.
idea because I figure if I'd not figure, but I've learned like if I don't do that, I'm like, oh my God, I remember waking up and thinking about there was a solution to some problem or how I was going to approach a conversation with somebody. Is that normal to like wake up in the middle of the night and like have, I guess, your dreams or whatever, like solve your problems sometimes?
I think so. I find that when I can take that nap, when I even things like blow drying my hair in the morning after getting a shower, like my brain just goes, or when I'm driving and I'm like, oh, I had this idea. And it's usually at the times when I'm less aware, I guess kind of not, I don't want to say meditative, but where I'm more calm. I'm with you in that I'm like, oh, I'll remember this in the morning. And then I don't. And I get very frustrated with myself. So
Yeah.
also
Hmm.
myself things. Um, so I'm curious what app you use for note taking.
Oh my gosh. Um, so let me give you a little bit of a backstory and then I'll share the different apps. So since I retired, um, I found myself like I love reading stuff, whether they be articles or books or whatever. And I found myself just like highlighting quotes and putting them down, but I wasn't really doing anything with them. And I was like, what am I doing this? I feel like I'm collecting all this garbage and I'm just like having it sit here and not really doing anything. So trying to move from the idea of taking notes to making notes. So how do you actually like make the time to think about them and process them? So I've worked through just about all the possible note-making apps that there are. So I started with let's see, look here, something called Roam. Okay, and of course we've all probably used Evernote. That's been around forever. But I think I abandoned that because that's just like a big garbage incinerator. You just like put notes in it and don't do anything with them. So I've used Roam, and then I went to Notion, and
Yeah.
now I'm pretty much sold on Obsidian, because you can link notes and that idea of making notes and thinking about what you put in there. So I find myself sort of navigating away from like I almost don't highlight anything. I almost don't do direct quotes of anything, but I'll take ideas and I'll like a concept, and I'll put it in my notes, and then I'll make a connection to something, whether it's a connection to another note. So in Obsidian, you can actually make links. So if there's a concept such as AI or AI first mindset, I might write something about maybe a personal 3 sentence personal reflection about how I find like this is something I want to get better at, or this is something that I've noticed the students in my class aren't very good at. So how can I create some conditions? So I'll make some notes that I'm thinking about this, and then try to connect them. And over the course, I feel like I've got all these disparate notes, but now there's something that's kind of emerging over the course of time as they kind of collide with each other. So yeah, I'm kind of into the Obsidian thing right now. Um, and I'm also with a couple of friends uh, trying to reimagine how we use AI in the act of consuming things, whether they be articles or even books. So if that intrigues you, I'd be interested to throw some ideas out.
It does. And
Okay.
I'm loving this too because I've been working with a coach who had me go back to Strengths Finder. And I realized that my number one strength is input, which in essence means I'm a collector of
Mm-hmm.
facts and knowledge and things. And I'm finding myself in a very similar situation where I have sticky notes, I have notes, I love books, but I'm not connecting things together. And I get very frustrated that I have all of this stuff that I want to use, but I don't have an organizational system for it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the things that Tammy has expertise in, is in organizational systems to help streamline your life. And so I'm excited to learn about these connections. And I'd love to hear about your thinking around AI and how to use this when consuming.
Yeah. So I know the word transformation is overused a lot, but it really is a lens through which I try to look at almost everything. And especially with this idea of AI and how like there are no experts on AI. There's lots of people doing a lot of experimenting, and some people get a very big megaphone and they just put their stuff out there, and we think that they become experts. But I think that to kick the tires and to experiment a lot is really important for everybody. And you don't have to be an expert to try it. And I've found that, particularly working with students, that if you actually spend the time and trying to develop that AI first mindset, even little pieces, that if you think about, I'm doing this task, how might I be able to use AI to do it? You begin to build that habit. And so one of the things that I've sort of tiptoed into the pool on is this idea of reading. So I like to consume things too, like you do, Krista. And I always find like there's not enough time in the day to do it. And I do have fear of missing out, like, oh my God, that book looks so good. When am I ever going to read it? Because I already have like 300 books in my pile that I need to read. And so what can I do? How can I deal with this? So one thing that AI is actually really good at is taking large amounts of data and being able to make sense out of them. So, one of the things that I've been experimenting with, and I'd love to hear your feedback on this too, and push back on it if you think there's something maybe unethical about this or just not right. I've asked my English department friends whether this is okay to do. So what I've been experimenting with is kind of like putting reading on steroids. And I've never been one of those people that has felt good about from another person saying, read this book, or like in school, like a teacher that said, read this book. And also, by the way, I'm talking about nonfiction books. I don't think this works for fiction. But what I've been trying is to get the Kindle version. And then I have a book scanner, which I can scan on my iPad. So in about 8 minutes, I can scan a book, and I can break it up into chapters, into PDFs, and I can put them into ChatGPT. And what I love about this is that AI gives us agency. Okay. So if I'm actually reading a text that I'm not really sure I'm going to like or find useful, I am still at the author's, he's got the agency because he has ordered this, or she has put these ideas in a particular order, and I have to pretty much follow it, even if I'm skimming it. Okay. But what I start out with, and I have a whole document that my friends and I, we've created these prompts. So the first prompt is to outline the chapter using the headings. And what that allows me to do is to say, ooh, that sounds really interesting. Let me ask it to tell me what the author has said about that. And so I can go through this process. So on one hand, I could read the book in a very linear manner, but using AI, I now have more agency to dig into the parts of it that I find most interesting. And the parts that I find really interesting, I will go to the book and read. So I'm using the AI as a filter so that I can consume more content, so that I can connect more ideas. I have more ownership over it. I know what my context is. I know what I'm curious about. The author doesn't know that. And now I can use the AI to give me kind of an aerial view of things. And I can say, okay, I want to go down this rabbit hole. I'm not interested in that one. Or I see the author has made this statement and this statement. Let me ask the AI, what if we, tell me more information about these two things together? Because one thing AI is really good at is connecting disparate ideas and generating some new idea. And then, oh, wow, that new idea then gets me to think about something else and make another connection. So my curiosity, and I don't have an answer to this, is a use of something like this allowing me to go deeper? Is it allowing me to take more agency over my learning? It also makes me wonder, like, oh my God, what if we taught kids how to do this? Because face it, most schools are not set up so that kids can pursue their curiosities. The AI allows us to do that. It allows us to say, here's this piece of text. I will do that too with articles. I will, if there's a long form article online, I'll copy and paste the text. I'll put it in ChatGPT and I'll say, like, give me a 2 paragraph summary. And it is a great gatekeeper of, like, good. I'm glad I didn't read that. It's really not applicable. Or, okay, I want to, like, dig into this. And then sometimes I will use the ChatGPT to create a metaphor. It's very creative too. So here's this concept, this idea. Okay, I'm a K-12 principal. Create a metaphor so that I can understand this concept a little bit better. Create me 3 metaphors, and then I can use my human ability to think about things critically and say, ooh, that metaphor, that really resonates. Or I can say, that metaphor really resonates, but I think you can do better. I think I'd like you to redo that metaphor, and I'd like you to make this better connection. So I threw a lot of things out there. What resonates? I don't think I'm being unethical because I'm buying the book. I feel like it's stuff I'm going to the library,
Yes.
and I'm, yeah. Okay. So I'll let you talk. Give me some feedback. What are you thinking?
So my thoughts were, like you said, there aren't enough opportunities for students to get creative with tools, especially when the tools are scary for teachers, right?
Mm,
So when teachers don't have enough knowledge about what AI can do, especially something like this, right? Like, you can put in some simple second grade content and help your kids pull out the main ideas and things like that, and get them to generate questions about it. And I think sometimes the scary part is like, we're just going to rely on what it says. But the value that like I really was grabbing from you was the connections that you're making, which is such a high level skill when you're thinking about different texts and bringing ideas together. And I mean, I'm going to steal that idea because I'm going to be doing some more writing soon, and like just taking some pieces of text and creating a metaphor, or like bringing another piece of text together to make some connections that sometimes we just don't have the bandwidth even, or like, you know, how you were saying the ideas pop in your head when you're sleeping, or like for me, it's like when I'm walking, I just come back and I'm like full of ideas. But sometimes we just need a phrase or a something to make the connect, to help us make the connection, or come up with a fresher idea. And why would we limit students from doing that just because it's scary for us on the teaching end? Krista, what do you?
I think that one thing to add to that when we use the AI with a teacher, with a student, is to reinforce that it is not the end of the conversation when it gives you something, that you always have to have the human input into that. So like, okay, it's given me this response. What do I think of that? Does that resonate? Could it be better? If it could be better, if I'm not satisfied with it, how do I ask it to do a better job? How do I give it feedback and say, just, okay, that's amazing practice. How often do we let kids give feedback to themselves or to other people? Here's an opportunity to give feedback to an AI, not a human, but something that has generated something that we can critically consume. So when teachers say, "Oh, it's going to take away the opportunities for students to think," absolutely not. I mean, you could use it that way, but absolutely not. It's actually, I think it brings the joy back into thinking, because there's nothing more joyless than looking at a blank sheet of paper and going like, where do I start? Throw it in the AI and it will give you 10,000 things to start with, or 12 or 5 or 6. And then you go, oh, okay, that one works. Now let's go with that. And let's use it as a partner to make the idea generation even better.
You hit me. I mean, there's a bunch of things that I wrote down to kind of respond to. The one part when you said about it being joyless to stare at a piece of paper. I am a person who has a hard time getting started. So if I can get a couple things started, boom, I am on my way and I'm invested and ready to go. And thinking about when you had asked if it was ethical, honestly, the first thing I thought about is if we're taking something that somebody wrote and it's going into AI, but you've purchased it already. And it's also, if it's going into this system that's out there, other people are able to hear these different pieces of what the author has written. And so I'm thinking this is probably not anything that's not already out there. Like once an author puts a book out and it goes on to Kindle and it goes on to all the things, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I have a bunch of books that were sent as PDFs, and some of them are older, but they have really good content. And every once in a while, somebody will bring it up. I'm like, here, take this PDF of a book. And so I'd be interested to hear, Tammy, as an author, if that's something in a moment that you're like, oh, you know, I put time into this, but we're using it and consuming it. And I think that is ultimately what an author would want. And thinking about that generation of generating new ideas, I would never buy a textbook where somebody else had already highlighted. And other people would be like, oh, I want the one that's highlighted because somebody else already did the work. And I'm like, but what if that's not my work? What if they don't make the same meaning that I make? So I always wanted the fresh books with nothing in them so that I could start making those meanings. And as someone who really loved this idea of pulling disparate ideas together to create something like a grounded theory, I love that idea of seeing where you can make these connections to really launch your own personalized learning. And then lastly, when you were talking about creating metaphors, I'm like, what a great way to connect with families and caregivers and communities, because we know that it was Marzano, wasn't it? Where one of the 9 best ways to learn something is to create metaphors and similes, connecting it to something that's prior.
Mhm.
If we don't necessarily have somebody else's experiences, how can we be a better, maybe a better way to facilitate learning than to connect it to somebody else's strengths and assets and knowledge base? And so as an educator, I think we're facilitating that piece.
Mhm.
Um,
So I think two of the strengths that AI has that humans don't necessarily have, or at least at the great intensity, is the ability to consume so much knowledge, because it has the AI has a huge brain, and I hate to make it human, but it has a huge brain. It has more knowledge and experiences inside of it than any human being could possibly have. And the second thing is that it can process that information more quickly than any human being can. So you've got this massive amount of information with this massive amount of computing power behind it. So it acts like a brain, but it acts in a way that is more powerful than any human being. And so how do we use that as a partner? How do we imagine that, when we're sitting around a table, or even if I'm sitting alone at my computer, imagine I'm sitting at a table and the AI is a thought partner, is somebody at the table that when I've got a curiosity or a question or need help with something, it can help me. I'm writing something, I put it in AI, I say, give me feedback. Where's the argument flawed? Where do I need to fill in the gaps? Where's it strong? How can I put a good ending on it? Should I use more metaphors here? Should I add a scenario here? What could I do with that? And again, don't take it for granted what it gives you and just say, oh, check, done. Let me insert that. But okay, I'm going to be critical. Ooh, I like that scenario, but I wish it was connected more to a teacher's life, a principal's life. Give me that. Give me a scenario built around that concept through the lens of a student. How would a student feel about that? And that leads me to one more thing. I'm probably rambling too long. One of the really interesting things, because AI has scraped, and this is definitely controversial, supposedly, scraped everyone's electronic digital stuff out there. If there's a thought leader in a particular space, and they've got stuff out there that AI has consumed in its brain, if you've got a problem or a scenario, ask it to take on the role of that person and to give you advice on how to solve that problem. How would that person solve that problem? So oftentimes what I will do is, if I'm thinking in terms of systems, like systems thinking, one of the key folks in systems thinking was Donella Meadows. So, and her writing's all over the place. So I will say, okay, here's this educational scenario. There are multiple systems that are involved. Identify the systems. Okay, now pretend that you're Donella Meadows and you want to outline a set of steps to approach a solution, a systems thinking solution to this. What would you do? And so you ask it to take on different personas. You can do it if you have a favorite writer who writes in a particular style. Write. I actually tried this a few. Like, I like Adam Grant and the stuff that he posts on Instagram. So I'll be like, take this writing passage, this thing that I wrote, and actually, before I do that, I say, do you know who Adam Grant is? And it says, gives me a little bio. And then I say, in bullet points, outline Adam Grant's writing style. And it will actually break it down into, pithy statement, advice, collaborative, those kinds of things. And then I'll say, take this writing, something that I've written, and create a meme for social media in the style of Adam Grant. And it will take what it knows about that style of that particular, it could be anybody, it doesn't have to be Adam Grant, but it could be a particular writer, and it will translate it into something that person might say. So there's all sorts of different things. And I go back to the idea of experimenting. Like, there's no book or manual on these things. That everybody just has to think about, how could the AI help me? And that's human creativity right there.
As you're talking, I'm writing all these notes. I'm like, you are going to see my social media all of a sudden transform. You're like, Krista, what is happening? But I actually wrote down on a sheet of paper, like the people who I've been most kind of enthralled with lately. Adam Grant always has piqued my interest. Simon Sinek, Seth Godin, just
Yeah.
emails I get every day. I'm like, they're short, they're powerful. I'm like, I want a brain like that. Like, these are the things that, and I love this idea of, thinking about how would they view this scenario or situation, and
And
leveraging.
again, I go back to whatever it generates for you, don't take it at face value, critique it. And if it generates something in the style of somebody else, or if they're taking on a persona of somebody else, and there's something there that doesn't make sense, question it. How did you ask it? Like, how did you get to that? Give me a glimpse into your thinking, even though it's not human and it's really not thinking. It can explain how it got to that point.
I like too that you've been talking about how it gives agency to whoever is using it. And I'm a huge learner agency person. And so I think when students at whatever age you start teaching them how to use this tool, when we open up these opportunities to be creative with how to use it, give them some prompts to try out, and then talk about like how they decided. Like, it's almost like another layer of thinking, right? So it's like the stuff that you're inputting and then getting back out. But then why did you use this tool in this way? What was it that was helpful for you? So there's another layer of like skill development and thought process after using a tool like this. And we had a previous conversation about, giving somebody the purpose behind what they're doing, because that's important for people to know. And if we want people to actually invest themselves in learning, and especially learning a new tool, they got to know why they're using it and what the purpose is. So I feel like this is it's such a huge opportunity for all of us to just tinker around, like you said, experiment. It doesn't have a guide. Just put something in there and see what comes out, to see how it, like, whatever you put in is, it's so interesting to see what comes out. Just even from titles for like ideas for conference sessions, or like things that you just, that no one really likes writing. But it's like, yay, now AI can help me write this blurb for this conference session. And even though the ideas might be living in my head, it's just got a way of putting the words together in a much better way than I can. So the experimentation is so important, and it makes it fun.
You have me thinking too, and Randy, I think I've mentioned this in some of our conversations, that in some of the curriculum support that we do for school districts, that it's around, and I believe in this wholeheartedly, moving more towards authentic performance tasks as opposed to rote tests in a given period of time. And while there's a framework for being able to do that, and clues and tips and tricks, how amazing would it be to type in, and here's the components of an authentic performance task. Here's what we need our students to learn throughout a unit, and the different levels of thinking, complexity of thinking, and the different standards. Can you please create? And I use please, interestingly, because I still use please for typing at GPT. Please do this for me. Thank you. Creating something that would take less time and probably be more developed than what I could do. And then, like Tammy and you both said, go back and revise it. So if we're really trying to shift the landscape of what education looks like, making it more meaningful, giving students more agency, making it clear why they're learning what we're learning, let's give them more opportunities to demonstrate what they're learning in a more realistic way.
And a more joyful way. I go back to that word again, that, it doesn't have to be drudgery. And I think that, getting over the mindset that if it's not drudgery, then they're losing something, if the AI is taking away that joyless part, they're not building character, they're not, going to be prepared for a rough life, or, when they experience problems, they're not going to be able to persevere. And like, I think you can learn perseverance in other ways than just being. And it goes back to one of the questions that I'm really curious about right now is to why are educators, because we work in that space, but why are educators, I won't say necessarily resistant, but kind of ambivalent to this whole thing about AI? I am surprised and shocked, actually, how many people, the large percentage of people that haven't even used it. They haven't even started having conversations about this. And I'm curious as to like why. Do you have any thoughts on that and your experiences and people you cross paths with?
I can share that just a couple weeks ago, I was working with a math team around curriculum development, and we got to the part of big ideas and essential questions. And I said, here's what they are, and here's the purpose behind both of them. But for us to sit here as a group and to try to come up with something on our own is a waste of time. Let's see how we can leverage different AI, different forms of AI to see what we come up with and then tweak it. The entire group of teachers was in on it. They were in different ChatGPT, plus there was another one. I think it was a woman's name. I'm not remembering. Somebody else brought up Magic School AI that I still haven't explored yet, but she's like, I love this for helping to refine some lesson plan ideas. And then on the other hand, I met with another administrator who's like, oh, I was agonizing over writing this and this and this, and, you know, a cover letter and applying for this job. And I'm like, take your ideas and put it into ChatGPT. I'm like, it's your ideas, your original ideas. And it's helping you refine. So I'm seeing those two camps as well. And how can we kind of move people in? I'm like, let's then have a conversation around what we're finding and how we want to refine that to make it fit what we want, instead of getting frustrated that we're not coming up joylessly looking at a blank screen. Tammy, what are you seeing?
I'm seeing nothing where I'm at right now. We have not talked about ChatGPT. In my previous role as director of teaching and learning, I started using it to help teachers build their unit plans vertically, because it's the same content across grade levels from K to 6. But of course, you've got to increase your complexity with all of those concepts. So I started using it to help them get some lines of inquiry set up for each of their grade levels. And again, like, I put in, give me a vertical, or give me lines of inquiry, grades kindergarten through grade 6 on this content. I plugged it in and it gave me, a handful for each grade. And then I just like refined them. And those were the basis for what the units were. And so I was trying to get teachers like into that practice, but then my funding for that role ran out. So I'm like, okay, well, you're kind of started. This is what it looks like. I made a video for like what prompt to put in ChatGPT so that they knew exactly what to write. And just like try it out, right? Like this is helping you do your vertical alignment with the content that we have. So why would you sit there and try to think about it yourself when we can just we have the content? Let's just have a machine figure it out for us.
Or at least take the joyless work out of it so that we can take and think about and have conversations about what it's putting on the table for us to work with.
Yes.
I think that's a big difference.
Yeah. And then get to the fun stuff, because teachers, they love the planning part, right? It's just sometimes you get stuck in those like what can be nebulous or can be just too nitty gritty. So yeah, it just takes some of that out of that process.
Too, if it connects back, Randy, you had asked like what might prevent people from doing that. And I think it might be around our concept of ethics or what we think is cheating. I mean, even thinking about, well, we want students to collaborate, but they have to do things independently. Like it's this dichotomy that we have where, do it on your own, eyes on your own paper, but oh no, over here, you need to learn how to talk and to communicate and negotiate. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of that space in between. And I wonder and I am all for, and please understand that like, as somebody who values research, I'm all for sharing where you got information and ideas and honoring the people who came before you. But I also think that it's like that standing on the shoulders of giants that they say, like, here was the path I took, the people who created this path, and here's where I picked it up and where I added something, or where I used, I saw these different pieces come together, and I still had a human touch to it, but it's beyond the capacity of what we could perhaps have done over a period of time.
And always keep the human in partner with the AI. It's not going to replace humans, at least probably in our lifetime. But who knows? But right now, as long as we keep, they say, the human in the loop, we keep the human touch in there. We're the final arbiter of the stuff that it generates. And it will, we can keep it human centered.
And I think that's one of the things that I've always appreciated about you. And I'll share with our listening audience here that I think the first time I met you, and I shared this, was like 12 years ago. I was just starting off as a grad assistant and coming in to help facilitate a program for the group of superintendents. And you were there, and Tracy Smith and somebody else were presenting around technology and education.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And you and Tracy were the nicest, kindest people to me. And I know sometimes when people are like, oh, you're a GA, like you're kind of like the bottom of the rung. And like both of you didn't, and so many people didn't, but a couple people did. It just treating somebody with respect, and I just felt so warm, like it was just a warmth that I really appreciated from both of you. And I admire the fact that while you appreciate technology and you're excited for it, you don't ever lose the sight of the human piece. And I want to wrap that back around, because you started something called the Human School. And I know we're coming close to our end, but I want people to hear about this. And you're looking at a way of being able to transform education through, and I'll tell me if I'm misunderstanding this, but like 4 different lenses where you can be a transformer of education through being an inventor, a storyteller, an objector, and a curator. And I love thinking, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about those pieces and where people can find them, because I think they'll see that it's not an either and, it's an either or, it's an and, that you can put these things together.
Sure. So I retired in January of 2021 from public ed, and it was in the middle of the pandemic, and we were all in our homes. Like you couldn't go to a restaurant or socialize with anybody. So I was like, hey, maybe I should just think about, like, do I have anything else to offer? And so kind of being of an action researchy kind of mindset my whole life, I was like, let me just reflect on, like, what did I do and how did I do this? And I think I've always felt that education could be better. Even as a superintendent, there's political ways that you navigate saying that, but I always felt like we could be doing a better job. And one of the things that I always found was the systems to be dehumanizing, from the way that we look at student data to the way that we onboard people, to so many systems in school are just dehumanizing because they put the task before the people behind it. And, one of the things in my core is that everybody has gifts and assets they bring to the table. I don't care if you are a 5-year-old kindergartner or a 40-year-old experienced teacher, or the custodian working in the building, or the person who cleans out the parking lot, or the bus driver. Everybody has something in life. They've had this journey, this trajectory, these milestones. They bring something, and it's our responsibility when we interact and build relationships with those people to figure out what those are for our own benefit, but also to help other people see what their gifts and assets are that we see in them. And so over the course of 10 months, I did this reflection based on some of those core principles and came up with this idea of the human school, which is we need to make school more human-centered, where people feel seen, heard, and valued. And, so how do we go about, what's the process? And so it's kind of a riff on action research, where first you object to something, you find a challenge within your system, something that's not fulfilling its need as best as it could be. And so then you object to that. And, how do you object to something without being objectionable? We've had all those those people that we've encountered that, believe that the way to make change happen is to wave their hands and scream and stomp their feet. Well, nah, that usually doesn't work. That's not very human-centered. So then once you find something that you want to change, you brainstorm a solution. And you have to do that with other people. And this is where the idea of leadership comes in. I think I've in my career, I've seen a lot of leaders who feel like they have to have the solution, or even the people that they serve feel like the leader has to have the solution. Like, that's what you get paid for. You're the superintendent or you're the principal. I'm just the teacher, they say. And that's rubbish. It's like, okay, this is all of our problem. We're all part of the system. So if this is a problem, let's figure out together, collaboratively, how we solve that. And you do that first by building relationships and connections with people, and you honor those things that they bring to the table, and you say, ooh, this is an interesting group of people, look at all these things that they bring, how can we use that to design some kind of solution? All that sounds like a lot of theory at this point, but it works. And then you want to test that solution out. You got to implement it. You got to gather data. And I say it's always human-centered data too, which is usually qualitative data. You want to have conversations with people about, how did that solution change your life? How did that change the experience of this particular system? And then you have to make sense of that data by reflecting upon it. And then ultimately you want to convert that into a new story that you put out there to help people realize that the system can change. Here's some evidence how. And then you start all over. Once you tell a story, then you've got to find something else to object to. So the system is never perfect. It's constantly evolving, and we have to be agile with it. And so this is a little process by which people can, that I found through my experience, that, when we were using technology, and when there was, the initial way that we were using technology was to just make current practices more efficient. And then asking the question of, like, is there more to this? Like, how might this help us change the way we do assessment, or change the way, change the gauge of agency in the classroom? So you start to ask those questions, and then you design solutions. It could be a new pedagogy, it could be a new practice, it could be translating something that's a theory, a pedagogical theory, into your particular learning environment. And let's collect some data on it. And then let's go to the school board and tell them the story about this, so that the next time they make a decision, they can see, the wonderful impacts of that particular way of doing things. So I think if you do that in small increments over the course of time, those small things build up to larger systemic changes.
Randy, you've given us so much to think about, and the human school sounds amazing. Like, if I wish that was available when I was in school in the 70s and 80s, that would have been lovely. But as we wrap up the show, I mean, obviously we could keep talking for a long time about this, but the question at the end of the show is always, what is your SEL superpower?
I think even though I'm an introvert, I love connecting with people.
Yeah.
I love building relationships with people, and goes back to what I said. I love trying to figure out what's their gift and asset. What's the thing they're bringing to this conversation, to their work, to this institution. And I think that keeps me empathetic, curious, and ultimately, I think those are the things that are the grease that keep the wheels moving forward.
And so, for people who are listening to this, who say, how can I learn more about the human school, or learn more about the program at Moravian, or just get a hold of Randy and pick his brain more about AI and learn more about his philosophy and the blending of these two things that many people like to separate out, being human-centered and the use of technology. How can people get a hold of you?
So the Human School is at thehuman.school. The domain is a school domain. So it's thehuman.school. To get in touch with me, if you just probably Google my name, you'll find various ways to get in touch with me. At Moravian, the EDD program is at moravian.edu/EDD, which is very easy. And so the program is based a lot on the things that we talked about today.
Yeah.
So
And
happy to connect with people.
And the program too is mostly online, right? And then people can come during the summer to have that face-to-face connection with them. So it's really meant it, and you helped like this philosophy of thinking about what this could be. How can people do this while they're working, but then also have a chance to come in and connect? So that blending of tech and being human-centered at the same time.
Yeah, it's been really fun to design something from the ground up, and it's designed a lot on the principles and the ideas that we talked about today. So that's been fun. So it starts this summer. We have a cohort of 21 people, so it's going to be awesome.
That's fantastic. Best wishes with all of that. We look forward to keeping in touch and to hearing how things are going. Also, for those of you who are listening, you can purchase a set of cards around each of the 4 aspects of the Human School. And I have a set that I use in my professional learning. In fact, I am going to be using them tomorrow, and I hadn't even told Randy about this yet, but I'll be using them in some work I'm doing tomorrow. Thank you to those who have tuned in again. I find myself not able to fill Craig's shoes with his amazing sign off. But I just want to remind all of us that if you're listening to SEL and EDU, you know that we are human focused, that we put the students at the center of everything that we are doing, that we're continuing to learn how to improve our lives, to get better together, to improve the lives and the educational systems for our students. And so we hope that you will continue to hold yourself and those closest to you and to stand strong in the SEL light. Thank you, and we'll see you on our next episode.